Homelessness in America is no longer a distant tragedy, confined to the backstreets of coastal metropolises. It has become a defining crisis of the nation itself. In city after city, from sprawling Los Angeles to rising Midwestern hubs, the sight of tents, makeshift shelters, and weary faces has become unavoidable. Yet perhaps nowhere does this reality strike more starkly than in Phoenix, Arizona, a city that has long embodied the promise of growth, opportunity, and sunshine. Here, in the Valley of the Sun, prosperity and poverty collide in ways that are impossible to ignore. Gleaming towers rise from the desert floor, luxury developments sprawl across the horizon, and new residents pour in every day. But alongside this boom lies a parallel truth. Sidewalks lined with tents, overpasses crowded with the displaced, and entire families struggling to survive under one of the harshest climates in the country. Phoenix is a place where the American dream and the American crisis live side by side, often just a block apart. To understand what it means to be homeless in America today, one must look to Phoenix. It is both a mirror and a warning. A city where explosive growth, punishing heat, and systemic shortcomings converge into a humanitarian emergency. This is not merely the story of a local crisis. It is a portrait of a nation at a crossroads, forced to reckon with the people left behind in its pursuit of progress. Phoenix, a city of light and shadows. Phoenix, often celebrated as the Valley of the Sun, rises defiantly from the Sonoran Desert like a glittering mirage. The city's skyline pierces through the endless blue, its glass towers shimmering in the relentless Arizona sun. Wide boulevards stretch outward in geometric precision, dotted with palm trees swaying lazily under skies that rarely know a cloud. To the millions who visit or move here each year, Phoenix feels like a promise fulfilled, a land where opportunity gleams as brightly as the sunlight that pours down nearly every day of the year. Expensive malls hum with shoppers, high-tech offices pulse with ambition, and suburban neighborhoods sprawl outward with manicured lawns and sparkling pools, a modern desert paradise sculpted by human determination. But this radiant portrait conceals another Phoenix, one hidden in plain sight. Beneath the shadows of overpasses, in the alleys behind luxury hotels, and the long sidewalks only blocks away from thriving entertainment districts, exists a parallel city, one built not of steel and glass, but of tents, tarps, and weather-beaten cardboard. It is here, in a place that locals grimly call the Zone, that thousands of men, women, and children live without shelter, stability, or hope. At night, their silhouettes flicker against the orange glow of street lamps. Their whispers carry on the desert breeze. By day, they endure the punishing heat of one of the deadliest climates in America, where summer temperatures can soar past 110 degrees, and asphalt itself seems to breathe fire. For Maria, a mother of two who once worked in a Phoenix hotel before being priced out of her apartment, Phoenix is no longer a beacon of possibility but a battlefield of survival. For James, a veteran who carries the invisible scars of war, the city's promise has narrowed to a strip of sidewalk where he tries to find sleep. For countless others whose names will never make headlines, Phoenix is not a city of dreams. It is a city of endurance. Here, the phrase homeless in America is not abstract. It is lived out daily in sweat, exhaustion, and quiet despair. This is not merely a social issue to be debated in policy rooms or measured in statistics. It is a humanitarian crisis unfolding beneath the same desert sun that fuels Phoenix's image of vitality. The Valley of the Sun, for all its brilliance, casts long and unforgiving shadows. And in those shadows dwell the forgotten, the marginalized, and the displaced. To understand Phoenix is to confront this contradiction, to see not only the wealth and expansion but also the suffering it overshadows. What emerges is not just the story of a city, but a reflection of a nation wrestling with its own conscience. The expanding reality of homelessness. A decade ago, homelessness in Phoenix was present but faint, a shadow that lingered at the city's edges. You might have caught a glimpse driving through certain downtown corners. An old mattress tucked beneath a bridge, a lone figure wrapped in a blanket on a chilly desert night, or a handful of tents hidden in neglected neighborhoods. that most commuters sped past without a second glance. It was easier to pretend that homelessness was someone else's burden, a distant reality belonging to other cities with bigger reputations for poverty. Phoenix, after all, was booming, its population swelling, its economy thriving, its reputation gleaming as a crown jewel of the desert Southwest. But today, the illusion of distance has shattered. Homelessness is no longer hidden. It has bled into nearly every artery of the city. Rows of tents now line busy sidewalks, their faded nylon flapping in the hot desert wind. Men and women sit slumped against stucco walls, their eyes weary from heat and hunger. At intersections where SUVs idle under the blistering sun, cardboard signs beg for mercy, anything helps, hungry vet, just trying to survive. These are not isolated scenes. They are the new backdrop of Phoenix, woven into the fabric of daily life. To ignore them is to ignore the city itself. Perhaps the most haunting symbol of this crisis was the Zone, a sprawling encampment in downtown Phoenix that, at its height, stretched across entire blocks. Thousands once crowded into this makeshift settlement of tarps, pallets, and tents. In the sweltering summer, heat radiated from every surface. In the winter, cold desert nights gnawed through thin blankets. Despite the desperation, the Zone was more than a cluster of shelters. It was a fragile community. People shared food, traded stories, watched over one another when the nights grew dangerous. But it was also a place of suffering so visible it became impossible to deny. The Zone stood as a wound in the city's heart, a reminder that the American promise, so proudly displayed in Phoenix rising towers, was, for many, broken beyond recognition. Here, the phrase homeless in America was not a statistic but a daily reality written across human faces. Eventually, the Zone was dismantled under court orders, citing public health and safety. Officials argued that sanitation hazards and crime made its existence untenable. Bulldozers moved in, police enforced sweeps, and the tents were torn down. But removing the encampment did not erase the crisis. It only displaced it. Families dragged their belongings in shopping carts to other streets. Some sought refuge under freeway overpasses. Others disappeared into hidden corners of the city or pushed deeper into the desert's unforgiving fringes. The Zone was gone, but the people were not. The suffering has simply scattered, fragmenting into smaller, less visible clusters. The wound was no longer concentrated in one place. Instead, it spread like cracks through the foundation of the city. What remains is a Phoenix that must confront itself. A city where prosperity and homelessness coexist on the same blocks, often just steps apart. A city where tents may be swept away, but the human crisis endures and grows more urgent with every passing year. Root causes. Why Phoenix became a crisis point. Phoenix's homelessness crisis did not erupt overnight. It is not the result of a single failure, but of 1,000 small fractures converging into one breaking point. What the city faces today is the outcome of intertwined forces, a vicious cycle that traps thousands and leaves little room for escape. Reason 1. Soaring housing costs. The boom of Phoenix has been both its pride and its curse. Over the last decade, the city has become one of America's fastest growing metros. Newcomers flood in, drawn by its sunshine, affordable taxes, and booming job market. But as cranes rise and suburban sprawl stretches further into the desert, affordable housing has fallen far behind. Investors, both local and out of state, seized the opportunity. They bought apartment complexes in bulk, renovated them just enough to rebrand them as luxury living, and doubled the rents. A modest one-bedroom that once cost $800 now often exceeds $1,600. For families living paycheck to paycheck, such a jump is catastrophic. Consider Maria, a single mother who once balanced her job at a call center with rent on a modest two-bedroom. When her lease renewal came with a $600 increase, she tried moving with her sister, then into her car with her 2 children. Eventually, when even gas money ran out, the family found themselves sleeping on church steps. Maria's story is not rare. It echoes across Phoenix, as stability collapses into displacement and displacement into street homelessness. Reason 2. Insufficient shelter capacity. Emergency shelters exist, but they are overrun. On hot afternoons, lines begin forming outside long before sundown. By nightfall, dozens, sometimes hundreds, are turned away. Inside, beds are crammed close together, strict curfews, bans on pets, and rules separating families can make entry impossible for many. For some, the shelters feel less safe than the streets, where at least they retain control over their space. A man named George, a veteran in his 60s, described choosing a patch of sidewalk over the shelter because he feared theft and violence inside. For him, the desert's silence felt safer than the chaos of overcrowded cots. Reason 3. Deadly climate. Perhaps nowhere else in America is the climate more unforgiving to the unhoused than Phoenix. Summers here are not merely hot, they are lethal. Temperatures soar above 110 degrees C for 4 days on end, and the asphalt itself can scald skin in seconds. In July 2023, the city endured a record-breaking streak of 31 consecutive days over 110 degree F. For people without shade, hydration, or medical attention, survival becomes a daily gamble. Dozens die each summer from heat stroke, dehydration, or related complications. Outreach workers tell stories of arriving too late, finding bodies under bridges, or men collapsed on sidewalks clutching empty water bottles. The desert, indifferent and relentless, kills quietly but steadily. Reason 4. Social factors. Job loss, health, and addiction. Behind every tent is a story of loss, and often of cascading misfortune. Some were tipped over the edge by job loss during economic downturns, others by sudden medical bills that emptied savings overnight. Mental illness, untreated and stigmatized, erodes stability until work, housing, and the relationships slip away. Addiction, particularly to fentanyl and methamphetamines, snakes through homeless encampments, offering momentary escape at the price of deeper despair. A man named Tony, once a landscaper, fell into fentanyl use after a back injury left him in chronic pain. Now, instead of trimming the lawns of Phoenix's suburbs, he drifts between encampments, his life defined not by work but by survival and withdrawal. Without affordable healthcare and robust treatment programs, thousands like him remain locked in cycles they cannot escape. Reason 5. Policy contradictions. Perhaps the cruelest irony lies in the policies themselves. City and state governments face pressure from businesses, residents, and tourists to clean up the streets. Encampments are cleared, tents confiscated, and people dispersed. Officials point to public health, safety, and urban revitalization. Yet the math never changes. There are not enough beds, not enough affordable apartments, not enough pathways out. Clearing one camp only shifts its residents elsewhere, like water leaking through cracks in pavement. Even outreach workers describe it as a game of musical chairs. Except here, when the music stops, someone is left standing in the heat with nowhere to go. Taken together, these forces have forged a crisis unique in its scale, yet tragically emblematic of the nation at large. Phoenix has become a frontline example of what it means to be homeless in America in the 21st century. Priced out of housing, overheated by a punishing climate, underserved by shelters, undermined by untreated health struggles, and misunderstood by policy contradictions. It is a crisis not of individuals failing, but of systems breaking down, leaving thousands caught in the cracks. Government efforts, bandages on the deep wound. Facing mounting pressure from residents, business owners, and advocacy groups, Phoenix officials have rolled out a series of emergency measures intended to slow the crisis. Large-scale shelters have been expanded, with cavernous former warehouses converted into rows of bunk beds under fluorescent lights. Thousands of additional beds now exist downtown, offering temporary relief to those lucky enough to claim them. The city has also embraced the housing first model, recognizing that stable housing is the foundation for addressing other struggles, employment, addiction, or chronic illness. Rental vouchers and low-cost housing projects have been introduced as lifelines to families teetering on the edge of eviction. But progress is agonizingly slow. The construction of affordable housing drags behind demand, often stalled by zoning battles, neighborhood opposition, or bureaucratic delays. Vouchers, once a hopeful ticket out of the streets, are increasingly useless in a market where rents climb faster than government budgets can adjust. Shelters, though expanded, fill within hours of opening their doors. At dusk, long lines form outside, where men and women clutch backpacks and plastic bags, waiting for a chance at a thin mattress and a few hours of sleep indoors. Many are turned away. The dismantling of the zone, carried out under court orders, was meant to restore order downtown. Bulldozers cleared tents, sanitation crews sprayed the sidewalks, and city officials declared victory. But for the thousands displaced, there was no clear destination. Some drifted to other neighborhoods, sparking new tensions with residents. Others pushed deeper into the desert, setting up camps along dry riverbeds or beside abandoned lots. The city's attempt at control scattered the crisis like dust in the wind, out of sight in some places, more visible in others. Meanwhile, lawsuits and public pressure push city leaders in conflicting directions. Business owners lobby for cleaner sidewalks to protect tourism and commerce. Advocates demand compassion, housing, and healthcare. Politicians try to balance both, often leaning toward quick fixes rather than long-term investment. The result is a city caught between enforcement and empathy, between sweeping people away and giving them a chance to rebuild. On the ground, mobile health clinics, often just vans outfitted with basic supplies, now roam the streets, offering free care, wound treatment, blood pressure checks, antibiotics, and referrals. Addiction treatment and mental health programs have received a modest injection of funding, but staffing shortages and long wait lists mean only a fraction of those in need are ever reached. Outreach workers describe the work as triage on the battlefield, helping those they can, while knowing many will slip through the cracks. For people like Rosa, a 53-year-old grandmother who lost her apartment after her husband died of cancer, these programs offer fleeting comfort but little resolution. She waits hours in line at shelters, clutching a plastic folder with her rental voucher inside, but every landlord she calls says the same thing: no vacancies, no vouchers accepted. For Jamal, a former construction worker, the mobile clinic treats his infected foot, but when night falls, he still has nowhere safe to sleep. Government efforts, though important, remain fragmented, like bandages placed over a wound that continues to deepen. Phoenix, under the weight of its own growth and contradictions, is learning that managing homelessness is not the same as solving it. And until the city addresses the roots of the crisis with courage and persistence, the cycle of displacement will continue, an endless rotation of tents cleared, shelters filled, and lives left in limbo. The role of community and nonprofits. Where government falls short, communities step forward. Phoenix is home to a patchwork of nonprofits, churches, and ordinary volunteers who refuse to look away. Their work often makes a difference between life and death, filling gaps that no public program has yet been able to close. Central Arizona Shelter Services (SS) remains the largest provider, offering thousands of beds nightly. But it does far more than shelter. Inside its walls, caseworkers help with counseling, job training, and legal support for tenants facing eviction. In one corner, a volunteer tutor helps a young mother polish her resume. In another, a retired lawyer donates time to guide a veteran through the maze of disability benefits. Each act, however modest, represents a bridge between survival and stability. Churches, too, form an invisible backbone. On Sundays, pews that once filled with worshipers now also host weary men and women seeking refuge from the sun. Fellowship halls transform into dining spaces where hot meals are served. Clothing drives turn into impromptu closets where a fresh shirt or a pair of socks is given freely without judgment. For some, the first thank you they hear in weeks comes not from an official, but from a church volunteer handing them a plate of food. On the streets, volunteers move quietly but faithfully. Some push wagons filled with bottled water and hygiene kits. Others carry blankets, bandages, and simple words of encouragement. In a city where heat can kill faster than hunger, something as small as a cold bottle of water can be the difference between life and death. One volunteer recalls finding Diego, a 22-year-old man collapsed under a bus stop from dehydration. A bottle of water, a few minutes of care, and a call to an outreach team saved his life that day. Community-based health clinics extend care beyond traditional walls. Nurses kneel on sidewalks to clean wounds. Doctors prescribe medications from vans parked under freeway overpasses. Counselors sit with people in tents, offering not just treatment, but a listening ear. For those shut out of the formal health system, these services are lifelines, fragile but vital threads of survival. Yet perhaps the greatest gift communities offer is not material at all. It is dignity. To look someone in the eyes and say, "We see you. You are not forgotten," is to affirm humanity in a place where so many feel invisible. For people like Marisol, who has lived in her car for 8 months, the kind word of a volunteer can mean as much as the sandwich in her hand. These acts, however small they may seem, shine as beacons of hope. They remind us that while systems may falter, compassion endures. And in the midst of despair, compassion can be the beginning of change. Conclusion: the light and the shadow. Phoenix is a city of contrast. It is sunlight and shadow, prosperity and poverty, growth and despair. Its shining skyline tells one story, its streets tell another. To truly see Phoenix, we must look at both. The crisis of homelessness here is not just about tents or statistics. It is about human lives, about mothers protecting children under tarps, veterans haunted by memories with nowhere to call home, young people lost in cycles of despair. It is about dignity, compassion, and responsibility. As Phoenix continues to grow, the question remains, will it grow only in buildings and wealth, or will it also grow in humanity? Will America itself choose to protect all its citizens, or continue to let them fade into the shadows of shining cities? For now, the crisis endures. And in Phoenix, the Valley of the Sun, thousands remain unsheltered. They are the forgotten faces of a city and a nation. That must decide whether to truly see them. They are, and will remain, a living reminder of what it means to be homeless in America.